welcome everybody to the Wednesday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. Mend, this morning, Carolyn Levitt, I think we could all agree is fantastic. Can we all agree on that?
Fantastic.
Golan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely amazing. All kidding aside, I've often said, everybody's heard me say that Mend should be the White House messenger because he could say in a minute what it takes others hours to say and be absolutely on point. And I was curious, Mendez, I was watching Carolyn Levitt this morning talk about all the good things that are going on. The $90 billion that was raised for Pennsylvania this week for AI and for natural resources from people in Silicon Valley, 19 billion investment from Bahrain, and just everything good going on. And the thought came to me, I'm watching this at home at 11 in the morning. I'm like a housewife. And I was curious as to why she doesn't do the daily press briefing at 5 o'clock at night. And I Googled it, and it's because really it goes by the old days where reporters would get the news and it would cycle out. They would have to write, and then it would go to cable shows. We're not in that world anymore, Mend. And I think it would be an awesome little trick if she said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to give the good news at 5 o'clock at night when almost all the country is at home and every news organization has to cut to it.
That would be a great idea. There's a couple of things that the White House press room did when this administration got back in power. So one is they got rid of the old legacy seating charts. They let a lot of independent journalists join the White House press briefing room. There also was a unwritten rule that allowed legacy media to decide when the press briefing ends. So, if they're running cover for an administration, which in the previous administration, we saw a lot of that. And at the end of a press briefing, someone would ask an uncomfortable question. Someone from the AP would get up and just say, the meeting is done. And then you're letting them off the hook, which then does this weird tit for tat thing where I scratch your back, you scratch my back. So if they let the White House spokesperson off the hook, then the next time they'll get the juicy questions. It was really dirty. It was very corrupt. So I'm glad with, the things that they're doing. And this idea that you have is absolutely genius. If the nightly news had to cut to the White House press briefing room every night, you'd get your message out.
It's actually a brilliant idea. I can't believe that nobody's thought of it.
Well, it's going to be the headline to the show, so hopefully President Trump sees it on True Social when we post it. But Golan, to the bigger point is, obviously she announced today that Trump has a few physical symptoms. I didn't know, and people could look up the name of it because it has something to do with the veins. I don't know how to pronounce it. I was impressed by the transparency and the willingness for her to come right out and say, because he's had bruising on his hands have been bigger, his feet have been a little bigger. And she went through the list of his physical symptoms with the doctors. And what a difference that was from 7 months ago, when we all knew there was a prognosis that was not or a diagnosis that was not being reported. This is how you kill stories. Go on the 5 o'clock news and say exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, first of all, it looks like it's a whole lot of nothing. And I don't mean that as in she wasn't sharing. It's a whole lot of nothing to be worried about. He has some stuff that are common for 70-year-olds in the legs. And he has some stuff that is common for people who shake a lot of hands. Okay, that's easy. Overall health, excellent. And, she even opened it up to some questions. So that does feel very transparent. And it goes back to the question you were asking about, why don't we speak to people directly? I think this is not only a good idea, but one of the things we've noticed is every time there's a message that comes out of the White House, it is filtered through what I like to call the media gatekeepers. Right? They are going to bake in their narratives. They're going to put their slants on it editorially. They're going to bring their ideological baggage and just plant it on top of it in a way that's going to change the message. Or worse yet, because everything is video now, they're going to take the clips that generate the most outrage or generate the most clicks. We know this because look no further than the famous find people on both sides thing, where when I showed them the entire clip, where he initially says, but they should be condemned absolutely. And they're like, I've known about this for years. I've watched the selective clip 1,000 times. I never knew this existed. This would just bypass the entire weaponization and cherry picking. I think it's an unbelievable idea.
That one actually got me because I heard all the news media report that there was a Nazi rally in Charlottesville, and they were marching with tiki torches and a bunch of neo-Nazis. And everybody reported that Trump said that there's fine people on both sides, and he called the neo-Nazis fine people. And I was like, okay, I've had enough of this nonsense, right? And then I heard the Dilbert comic guy, Scott Adams, and he called it a hoax. And I was like, what are you what hoax? The guy said they were fine people. What do you? And I looked it up. And at that time, it was really hard to find the video. I couldn't find a video of it, but I found the transcripts. And he said, and I am not talking about the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists because they should be utterly condemned. But there were fine people on both sides. And he's not talking about the neo-Nazis, people that were there to protest for these statues and people there to protest against the statues. So that's what he was talking about. And the fact that they ran with that lie, knowing it was a lie up until 25. Obama came out in the final stages of the last election and regurgitated that lie, knowing it's a lie, knowing how harmful a lie like that could be. You know, I knew a guy who was going through a divorce and his ex-wife accused him of pedophilia. Like the damage you do to your own children by lying like that. It was a lie. She admitted in the end it was completely made up. Her sister told her to do it because it worked for her and her divorce. Just demented, right? But the damage you do by doing something like that, the damage you do by inflaming racial tensions in a country that's already on the brink is just unacceptable. That got me to change course. As far as the transparency between this administration and the previous administration, night and day. As far as the bruise on Trump's hand happening from handshaking, I don't know if I believe that, but whatever. He seems overall in good health, and I'm glad that they're sharing that stuff.
It's all part of the same sort of thing that
a vein
has
thing.
Going
He's got
on.
a vein thing, something with the veins.
With his veins. But I want to move on a little bit because, Golan, one of the other things they spoke about, what Caroline Levitt spoke about, was listen, the border is closed for business, right? The border is 6,000 apprehensions in June, beat the record in March for 15. Nobody released. This is exceptional news. And then you have Cory Booker calling the deportations inhumane and against American values. And I'm like, we haven't been doing enough deportations because of these damn judges. So I have no idea what he's talking about. The deportation levels are off or at the same level maybe as Biden, but at least the importations are non-existent.
You know, this reminds me of many years ago. I was reading Time magazine and the cover said the year of the shark attack. And it was like, oh my God, the panic that went through everybody. And people were talking about it left, right, and center. And only years later did I discover that that year happened to be one of the lowest recorded years for shark attacks on record. And the highest year is also basically a nothing burger. It's such a rare occasion, but it was what they decided to scare people with to sell magazines. Okay, magazines, for those of you who don't know, are pieces of paper that are folded over with a bunch of words inside of them. And so basically it's a blog in your hands. So that is exactly the same thing because they want you to feel a certain way. It's the same thing I rant about on a regular basis. Whoever it is, whoever the puppet masters are, and by the way, they're all different puppet masters, all trying to get you to believe different things. In this case, Cory Booker ranting about deportations when deportations have not been ramping up in the way that they should be, is his way of placing that narrative at the forefront of your mind so that it becomes something that festers and festers and festers, and then eventually bleeds into the rest of your nervous system, and suddenly you believe it. And now it becomes a topic that is important to you because you've been told it should be. And you've been told that if it's not, there's probably something wrong with you, right? So even if it's not true, now it's something that matters. Like kids in cages, like any number of other things, and we could go through a list that is a mile long.
100%. You know, man, here's a headline from CNN. Okay. So I saw this headline and I was like, oh, wow, this must be, it was like when we all heard that there were 7,000 people at Turning Point, because we had that conversation on the phone where we both thought it was like a Lollapalooza style event and it ended up being 7,000.
We thought it was 100,000.
CNN, not Trump's dumping ground. Outrage over arrival of foreign U.S. deportees in tiny African nation. And I thought to myself, oh my God, good. They're sending thousands of people over. Take a guess how many people, man.
500?
5.
It's We can't do this fast enough and big enough. I am 100% on team Stephen Miller on this one. The country is not safe if there are people who broke the law, skipped the line to get in here. And all those people that did it the right way, this is an affront to them. There's a lot of immigrants who worked their asses off. It took them 20 years to get through the immigration process and become citizens. And then you have these people that jumped the fence. They were released from jail in Venezuela and they jumped the fence when they got to Mexico, and they're in the country and they got a cell phone and $10,000 a month. How is that right? And then we also have depleted healthcare systems. We have Medi-Cal here in California, Medicare for the country, underwater, absolutely upside down. There was a huge surplus, and now there's a massive deficit because they took all the money that was supposed to be a safety net for American citizens and they gave it to foreigners, and now the American citizens won't get it. So it's just unfair, and I am 100% on board. I used to be a little less so. I was like, well, if they've been here for a long time, give them a pathway to citizenship. Now I'm put them on a bus, send them back. And if they deserve to be here, they could make their way back to the border and check in with an agent and make their claim, make their case.
By the way, this accusation that comes up over and over again, if Stephen Miller's a racist, this is one of those things that we just know it. Trump said to inject bleach. He said find people on both sides. This guy's a racist. Like all of these things that we just know because we know them, forget where they came from or how they were implanted into our head. I will say that the soft bigotry of low expectations is pretending that non-white migrants are incapable of following legal channels. I think it's such a ridiculous thing to say, why would we expect these people to do things properly? It's like, do you not recognize that that makes you the racist? What we're asking is follow the rules. You know what Stephen Miller did do? He read the Constitution and now he's implementing it. That's called being a policy hawk. That's not called being a racist. And I think it's important for us to mention that as often as possible because nothing we're doing has to do with race. It has to do with law.
It's important to note where this goes. So yesterday there was a report came out from Germany where a bunch of Syrian migrants in Germany sexually molested a whole bunch of kids, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, in a public pool. And they were arrested, and the judge is letting them go because they're saying that climate change and the heat at the time in that pool caused these people to just not have agency. This is where it goes, where you start letting people off the hook. There was actually a maniac in a park here that tried to kidnap a kid. It's caught on video, and they're letting him off the hook because she's saying that he is mentally incapable of standing trial. So they're not sending him to a mental institution. And this guy looks like a mental case, violent criminal, and they are not sending him to jail. They're just going to put him back on the street. That's going to be great for your kids to be around this individual.
And by the way, those are just a couple of isolated stories. There are 1,000 others exactly like it.
Yeah, this guy's name is Solomon Guligan.
Wasn't there that fairy tale from the accountant Solomon Grundy? Sounds very similar. Golan, I want to move on though a little bit because this New York thing is becoming an embarrassment to our nation. To run his mayoral race, he got money from his parents. And this is socialism. I mean, really, this is, just so he could run this race, his very affluent parents stepped in. And again, I say this to people. Men has brought this up. A lot of people have brought this up. There's something about writing a check and owning a company before you are a mayor or a governor. George McGovern famously said this, and he got isolated and thrown out by the left because after he ran in 72, he opened up an inn in Delaware, I believe. And he was not familiar with OSHA and everything that comes in with building a thing. And he ended up losing the business very quickly. It went bankrupt. And he had written this thing that this is very important. Before you run for president, you should actually own something or have a business, cut a check.
Least have done something with your life. I understand this guy was a rapper and hey, cool, I guess. But the fact that he basically hasn't done much since day one that he's been an adult, these minor things that he has jumped into or places where his parents' affluent privilege allowed him to slip into some political environments. He isn't just another politician. He's a narrative. I'm talking about Zohran Mamdani here. And this latest thing, which I know it's being touted as a scandal, but those who are right now in the tank, they are like in a cult. It probably won't matter for them. But the fact that he is going on and on about socialism, and let's go ahead and seize the means of production and all the other stuff. I only have $2,000 in my bank account, he says. Yeah, but his parents bought him a $2 million townhouse. This is not a working class champion. His family's worth multi-millions, and they spend those multi-millions on him. The last thing that happened was he basically said, I quit working in January. Why? I knew mommy and daddy would take care of me. And then he turned around to everybody poor and said, I'm one of you. I'm going to give you some free grocery stores. So if you can't see through this facade by now, it's because you don't want to. It's because you are so ideologically captured that you're going to go ahead and Heil Hitler right down the street until you realize, oh my God, was this the wrong guy to back? It's going to be too late by then. So wake up. And if you can't, nothing we say is going to change your mind.
Real problem is that we're inviting people that hate this country into our country, and we're not just inviting them in, we are letting them educate our kids. So that is the root of the problem, and we've been doing it for a long time. His father is a 9/11 sympathizer, Hamas guy. He's just a complete, utter jihadi lunatic. And he's teaching kids at Columbia, right? Is it Columbia?
It's Columbia, and the thing he wrote was that suicide bombers need to just be considered soldiers in the war.
Yeah, no big deal. Just another suicide bomber. Globalize the jihad, which means blow up school buses. That's what this guy stands for. And then if you want to know where it leads to, look at New York. This is where it leads to, where your kids that were educated by these people actually think it's a good idea to elect them to office. That's where it leads to. This should be something that should be up on the national security top of their list, saying we need to protect our country. If you can't instill love of country into your society will collapse and you will be no more. So these guys that are out there, and the only thing they push all day, from MSNBC to The View to Columbia to Harvard, all of these places, all they do is push anti-American views. Why are we allowing that to happen? And I'm not talking about impeding on free speech. I'm talking about kicking the jihadis out of the country. And fat piggies like Ana Navarra, who just sit on The View and just spew hate all day, cut off the funding. I don't say go to MSNBC and ask them to fire her. I think there should be a concerted effort to ban all of the companies that advertise on those channels. And if you do that, you vote with your pocketbooks and you say, we are not going to support people who hate us.
Listen, I think that's a great point. I think you're 100% correct, but both of you said. And again, this was what Tim Walz ran on, right? Was that he didn't own a bank account. That was one of the big reasons to pick him, because Americans would identify with the guy with no bank account. I hate to tell them, most people have bank accounts. And again, the old racist lie about voter ID, when most blacks do carry around identification with them. And I love that video on the street. I don't know if you guys ever saw it, where somebody was interviewing black people on the street saying, do you have a driver's license or ID? And they're all like, yeah. Do you know where the DMV is? And they're like, yeah, it's on 62nd Street and whatever. Again, this is why they're at 28% in the polls. The last thing I want to talk about, or one of the last things I want to talk about, is this NPR story, Golan, where they're cutting funding for NPR. And for some reason, she came out and said, this is a health issue. This is a health and safety issue by cutting national propaganda radio, which is what everybody has known for years, that this is what it's called. Cut it, let them suffer, and let people that want to donate to NPR listen to NPR.
Do people, I'm asking on behalf of our listeners, do people understand how much money the federal government gives to NPR and PBS?
The problem is a lot of it was cut and went private to donors, but we're still giving a lot of money to these organizations. I don't know the exact amount, do you?
As of today, we're still talking over $1 billion, okay? So even if there were cuts, and there were, this still is a massive expenditure. And if we are putting this much money into an organization that is, I'm going to put this in heavy scare quotes for those of you not watching the video, quote unquote, nonpartisan organizations that are essentially there to just be more echoes of the same mainstream media narrative, then I'm sorry, it's not about defunding it. It's about taking it and saying, go ahead, if you want your private donation to go to this, do it. That's cool. There are plenty of people out there who probably want to hear that particular message, just like on social media, who want to be in that bubble and get whatever they already think validated over and over again, but now from someone with a cool microphone in front of them and 3 letters behind them. Pay those people out of your pocket and let them continue talking to you. But I don't need to do that, because if they are just, as they were just months ago, praising Biden's acumen and lambasting Trump's corruption and just basically deciding that the facts are less important than the feelings that they have about what's going on in the world, I just don't feel that should be something the government is responsible for.
The head of NPR, Catherine Marr, here are some things, because she denies that they're partisan. 99% of NPR staff donate to the Democrats, not to the Republicans. I would love to see an NPR that would be impartial, actually split down the middle. Here's a quote from her. I mean, sure, looting is counterproductive, but it's hard to be mad about protests not prioritizing private property as a system of oppression funded on treating people's ancestors as private property. This is supposed to be the head of NPR. She claims she's nonpartisan. Also, Donald Trump is a racist. Never underestimate the ability of white people to center themselves. I do wish Hillary Clinton wouldn't use the language of boy and girl. It's erasing language for non-binary people, right? I mean, I could go on and on and on.
How about the Hunter laptop story that the NPR managing editor said, quote, "We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories." One of the major scandals of my lifetime.
Yeah, I think of any lifetime.
I am, if NPR was truly nonpartisan, non-partial, I'd say, sure, give it some money, not the amount that they're giving it, but give it some money. But this organization is a corrupt, left-leaning. Let me just make this clear. If it was completely right-leaning, I would say the exact same thing. You don't want to be giving my tax dollars to one side or the other side that abuses the opposing side. So no, cut it all off, defund them, let them go figure it out on their own.
Well, the good thing is, man, you never have to shut down a right-leaning government-funded organization, because none exists. Because Republicans and the right do it the right way. They have the public airwaves. They pay a fee, a licensing fee for AM radio, and you have people like Levin, you have people like Hannity that get paid and work for companies and do it the right way. So that's how the right works. The left has never been able to get into this market, and it's driven them nuts since the days of Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh essentially exploded their minds with what he was able to do, and later on Drudge. It is an amazing thing.
Those days are numbered. Soros just bought up all of the little radio stations around the country. So you're going to see that change. You ever see that video where every single talking head on all these different stations, and they all start repeating the same thing about election denial or misinformation? And it's like word for word, the memo went out and they all say it. You're going to see a lot more of that. And one more thing.
I believe it was Spanish stations, by the way. The majority was Spanish stations that he's bought up. I don't think it's just little stations. I think with him, it was an organized attempt to get at certain demographics, which he's known to do.
Well, there's a war, and he's waging a war. There's a report that just came out. 102-page report exposes how major U.S. and European media outlets acted as uncritical megaphones for Hamas during the Gaza war, undermining a U.S.-backed food relief effort while shielding Hamas from scrutiny. So this came out, and it basically says what the Israelis and people that were pro-Israel or anti-Hamas have been saying all along, that all the major news organizations, especially NPR, but CNN and MSNBC and all these places, have been using Hamas propaganda and just running with it. And we're talking about the people that are feeding the Gazans. They've handed out about 100 million meals so far. The Gaza Food Initiative, the thing that by the Israelis and the Americans that are bypassing the UN and Hamas and feeding Gazans directly. And every time there's a shooting by Hamas close to any of one of these things, they blame it on the Americans or the Israelis. And now the comprehensive report came out stating clearly the bias in American news.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Golan, I want to end with this because it goes to what both of you or what men just said. And it's from somebody on Truth, and they wrote this. I'm not going to mention their name. They wrote, and this is obviously in reference to the talking heads like Tucker, and which it all seems like there's one through line with all of them, and that's being extremely anti-Israel or anti-Jew. And she wrote, and I think it was just perfect, she wrote, I think once people become deluded about Israel, anti-Jewish, and anti-Israel shills, they seem to become deluded about everything else in time. It's what I'm seeing. Once they go down that anti-Israel conspiracy rabbit hole, it's open season on them in terms of the lies and conspiracies they let in and the lies and conspiracies they spew out. And I just thought, wow, that was really perfect post.
It's very profound, and I think this all stems from a couple of things. Number one, if you look way, way back in history at the way Russian disinformation, starting with things like the Elders of Zion and all the rest, were there to destabilize society. But how did they do that? By attacking the Jews, by giving someone a scapegoat. And if you can do that in a successful way, it is how you take over not only a people, but an entire mentality. This is why the saying is, it starts with the Jews, but it never ends with the Jews. Is it the same thing that the Nazis did with Zissen radio, where they were broadcasting out all over the world in different languages, specifically targeting each group to let them know why the Jews were their enemy? And why did they do it in different languages? Because each territory had a different problem that they had to blame on the Jews. So it didn't matter what the problem was, the Jews were at fault. So that's what they did there. Same thing. We all can band together. Men pointed out a handful of episodes ago that when Arab leaders are in trouble, instead of saying, I'm going to fix the problem or kind of taking culpability, instead they say, Israel, Jews, problems. Then everyone's like, look over here at the shiny thing. They all look over at the Jews and nobody notices that their houses are on fire. That is a great observation by this person on Truth and is 100% true, historically speaking. Well done.
Well said. And men, final thoughts on that, because I read it and I was like, wow, this is really profound. And she just sort of nailed it on the head of these snake oil salesmen and charlatans that are running around. And your final thoughts on that?
I mean, Golan said it accurately. It's every time there is an issue, especially in that region, but now it's expanding to the rest of the world. So it used to be when Saddam Hussein had a problem, instead of dealing with his local problem, he'd shoot a Scud missile at Israel and everybody would be like, oh, yes, he's the guy. And before him, it was the leader of Egypt, before Sadat. I think Gamal Abdul Nasser, I believe his name was.
Nasser,
He would rally the people. We're going to go and march to Jerusalem. We're going to kill them all. You know, that was the big rallying cry. So much so that the Jordanians, who didn't even want to get into the war, their people got so excited about this that they felt like they had to join the war, and they got their asses kicked. So this goes back a long way. And now you're seeing it happening in France. You're seeing it happening in the UK, where they're doing the same thing, where they can't stand up for what's morally right. They can't back Israel in their war of defense on 7 fronts against these genocidal maniacs. They have to come out and condemn Israel. So you're seeing the exact same thing. It's just playing out. And unfortunately, it's spreading. It's spreading in the West, but it's diminishing in the Middle East. So you're not seeing that rhetoric coming out of Saudi Arabia as much, or the Gulf states. They're actually changing their ways. They're re-educating their populations, telling those their citizens that we are in fact relatives and we should be living in peace and we should be living in tolerance of each other. Yes, Golan said it accurately.
You know, I want to just finish with this. Last night I was doing a podcast with Ben Stein, The World According to Ben Stein, and he was talking about the Druze and the slaughter that's going on with the Druze and why we should care. And I encourage everybody to listen to his reasoning, because it's really important that we care about people that are dying and that are suffering and that are getting slaughtered across the world, whether they be Druze, Jews, or Christians. And I know America First means something, but Donald Trump cares about human life. That's why he wants the war in Russia and Ukraine to end, because he doesn't want to see people dying anymore. That's why he wants there to be a ceasefire in Israel. He doesn't want death. And that's how we have to live. And that's how we have to view the world, is we don't want to see suffering. And that's why we're so special as a country. As Mend has brought up oftentimes, we are the biggest donators around the world because we care about people. We cannot stop caring about people. We lose our soul as a nation if we do. If we stop caring about people, we become France. We become the UK. We become all of those people. And we're special. We're America. We care, and we don't want anybody losing their lives through vicious means like rape and torture and mutilation of what's going on with the Druze right now. So God bless Israel for standing up to Syria, and at a cost it'll come, but God bless them for doing that. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank people that have been downloading this podcast on Apple, Spotify, at The Daily Cheat Sheet, of course, Substack, The Daily Cheat Sheet, YouTube, The Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram, The Daily Cheat Sheet, X at TD Cheat Sheet. And of course, you could find me on Truth Social. You could find Golan. I specifically want to thank our friend David on Truth that constantly upvotes us into a different group. It's a lot of help, David. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are. God bless you all.